Hey everyone, welcome to Technical Explanation Show. Glad that you're listening or slash watching. I'm excited today to have our guest Rachael Woody. Rachael, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I mean, we're like 60 degrees in Kansas and it's the 10th of December.
I don't want to hear it. You know what? I would complain a little bit more, but it's like 50 degrees and it's supposed to be that way this weekend. So we've got
Yep.
we've got a 31 team junior high tournament here at this huge sports force thing. 10 mats we're setting up tonight, so it should be a good weekend of wrestling.
I'm excited. I get to work an all girls tournament today, this
Yeah,
afternoon. So,
and then
yep,
you were working
that'll
last
be
night too, right?
exciting. Pardon?
You were working last night too, right? Or earlier this week you did.
Yes. And I worked the night before as well. And I'm
Okay.
working Saturday.
All right, awesome. Because we need officials, obviously. So there's a lot of opportunities. But we are talking offline. Tell me about what you did earlier this week and why it was unique.
So I had a duel last night with girls, JV. Oh, and they threw in some kids matches to highlight a few kids, which is exciting for them to be, in the spotlight. But so they did senior night with a dinner. So around the mat, they put tarps down on the floor and set up fancy tables for the parents and people who wanted to buy a ticket and sit basically mat side and watch the duel. And it was the first ever girls' duel at that school. So dinner and a show.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure the hungry wrestlers that didn't bother them any how to see all the food.
Oh my God. Yeah. So the food is already set up when we walk in. And so, like, the whole gym smells like delicious food as we're trying to weigh these kids in. I mean, you feel bad for them at that point. You're just like, nothing like smelling home cooked food while you have to try to make weight on the scale.
Yeah, it's like when you have a trip to a morning tournament, and the heavyweights got all the food and they're eating the back of the bus and everyone's just trying to sleep.
Right. Spitting in a cup. Oh, yeah.
So busy week for you. But let's start at the beginning. I mean, how did you get into wrestling? What made you get into wrestling?
Well, I came from a wrestling family. So my dad wrestled college. When him and my mom got married, he kind of got her into officiating. Both my brothers wrestled. We wrestled as kids. They coached the kids program. So yeah, we got good old VHS of my mom screaming at us in the corner coaching, with us kids on the side showing what we're supposed to do. But yeah, no, I did a kids tournament my senior year of high school, and oh gosh, horrible day. Worst officiating experience ever. So yeah, and I'm young. I didn't really know the rules that well, was not prepared. So yeah, needless to say, I got my butt chewed all day. And kids tournaments are crazy. So I looked at my mom afterwards and I was just like, never again. Nope. I will no, never again. So I went off to pastry school and then came back and says, well, you want to pay off those student loans. Officiating's pretty good gig. So I was like, okay, fine. It's just this time we'll prepare you. We'll go to middle school. And so we spent time in the living room watching VHS tapes of my brothers wrestling and calling the match with it on mute and going over the rules and stuff. And yep, so she took me to that tournament in Goodland, Kansas, and the rest is history. I fell in love with it. Middle school, I mean, it has a special place in my heart. It really does. Just because that's what opened the door for me. That's what made me fall in love with officiating wrestling. I mean, I officiate volleyball as well. But I played volleyball, so that's easy. Wrestling took some time, even growing up in a wrestling family. So it just, yeah, after that, I was like, okay, yeah, I like this. I like this a lot, So started there and then just kind of worked my way up. And here I am 11 years later. It's my 11th year.
Awesome. So you said it was a little bit harder. Like, what were some of the tougher things to get down from the officiating perspective when you look at wrestling compared to volleyball and stuff like that? Like, what was the thing that maybe took a little bit longer than the other parts for you?
I will say, one being a female, but I lucked out. When I first started in Western Kansas, everybody, was used to my mom. She helped pave the way and open those doors, and had already worked high school state for boys. So really, I mean, she kind of broke a barrier. So in Western Kansas, it wasn't that bad. Everybody was very accepting. But then when I moved to Eastern Kansas, you could tell they'd never seen a female official before. So it was rough starting out. So when I went to my very first rules meeting in Eastern Kansas, one of the gentlemen looks at me and he goes, the basketball meeting's down the hallway. Yeah. Which, God bless his heart, we're good now, and I love the man. Yeah, we're on good terms now. But it was just so, oh, hey, no, sorry, this is wrestling. Basketball's down the hall, So the first year, even though I was registered, I didn't really work anything high school wise. I worked a couple middle school and mainly kids, and then I traveled out to Western Kansas to work tournaments with my mom for varsity, just to get higher level stuff. So yeah, the first couple years I was kind of non-existent in Eastern Kansas. And I just happened to wrestling is such a great family. So some of the guys that I have worked with have reffed with my mom and kids state, here in Kansas. And so just once I started officiating and they learned that, one of the guys says, hey, I need you to sub in for this JV tournament. And it's, a higher level JV tournament and stuff. So I said, oh, are you sure? Are you sure you want me to replace you? There's kind of that code when you get a replacement, that it has to be up to par. And so I said, are you sure? Yeah, yeah. And one of the high school coaches, Pat Kelly from Topeka Seaman, saw me there and he says, hey, I want you to come do my varsity dual tournament this next year. I've already got it scheduled this year, but I want you on my list for next year. And after that, it just, things kicked off, and that kind of started it for me. And so my second year of officiating high school varsity, I got my first regional. And my third year, I got my very first high school state that I got to work with my mom.
Oh, that's
which cool. Was, yes. I mean, best experience ever. And we got to close out the state tournament, 3-2-1A state tournament with the heavyweights as lead and assist. So, yeah, wrestling holds a pretty special place in my heart and in my family, and it is a tight-knit group. I know I can travel basically anywhere in the U.S., and if something happens, I got somebody somewhere, that I can call and is going to help me out. So it's pretty neat. But yeah, other than that, there's still challenge. I see more challenges now at the college level, now that I'm working college, being female and being the only one for the men's. But, we're all human. So eventually people see, and if you work hard, and show that you know the rules, then it gets easier. But there definitely is a little bit of a barrier. Whereas in volleyball, anybody can work volleyball. No, I'm kidding.
Sounds like a Geico commercial or something.
Yeah. But there is a much more diverse group of officials that work volleyball. I mean, you've got football guys, you've got basketball people, you've got baseball, softball that work volleyball. Whereas in wrestling, you don't see a whole lot of crossover between sports. You might have some basketball officials that do wrestling, or some football officials that do wrestling, or maybe a couple volleyball that do wrestling, but you don't see multi-sport in wrestling come together like you do in volleyball. So
yeah, what do you think? I don't know much about volleyball other than I know I stunk at it in PE class in high school. So, but it was pretty simple. Like for me, it was like, hit the ball, you can't go out past this line, and like you can't hit it more than this times. I mean, there's more stuff to it. Obviously, I said I don't know what I'm talking about, but with like wrestling, I mean, it's a foreign language almost. If you're, you know what I mean? Like if you're just trying to learn it, you don't even know what you're watching half the time. So I think that might be kind of contributing to it. It also, until recently, it wasn't like you could watch it on TV or anything.
Yeah, the
So
video out there now, the live feed, just being able to go back and, I mean, honestly, in the last week, I've had three funky situations that I've never seen before. And you're just like, but what am I supposed to call there? I mean, yes, there's this criteria and there's this definition, but we're not, we're somewhere in the middle, between the two. And you're like, but then this also applies. So I'm not for sure what I'm looking at, So you think that as an official, that it looks foreign because you've never seen any type of move or situation like that. And then you can only imagine what somebody on the outside that isn't familiar with wrestling is like, what the heck is going on? It just looks like a flurry of cats out there fighting.
yeah, and that's, I think that maybe too, that's a thing too for like I get to coach junior high, and I always say that like probably every episode, but just last week, like uh the other guy I get to coach with, we were like, maybe if we helped our parents understand the rules of wrestling, like and took some time with them, they might appreciate it some more, and then they could talk with their kids more about what they just watched. Because like some of them, I have brand new parents, first year wrestlers, in junior high, which is tough, right? And
Oh yeah.
they don't even know if their kid's winning or not. Like they're looking around for, are people in my same colors cheering? Like should
Right.
So it's just
And
different.
I love seeing that in the stanza, like when we're sitting off as, when you're off a round or you're off a couple matches taking your break. And you can always find the wrestling parents or the wrestling mom because you can see them explaining the match to somebody else and telling them what everything is and stuff, which is pretty neat. I mean, like that's what I love about wrestling is, oh, you're new here, let me tell you all about it. Let me explain what's going on to you, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, you have those types of moms, and then you have my mom who like moved more than I did on the mat. Like she was like doing all this thing. Like
The
in
animated.
retrospect, I would have paid someone to videotape her instead of my matches, because it would have been much more fun to watch her move than me.
Yes, that kind of sounds like my mother when we were kids,
Yeah.
jumping up and down and coaching and showing moves. Like, don't you know what you're supposed to be doing? This is what a half looks like.
Wrestling moms are the best. They're the absolute best. It's there's nothing like them.
Oh my gosh. And hospitality for wrestling, top notch. I mean, there's some good volleyball out there,
Is
but
there?
yeah, yeah. I mean, most of us, I feel, we kind of got a little list of places, that you remember that you're
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, I want to go back there for sure.
Yes.
So, and wrestling's pretty much that across the board.
I wouldn't be lying if I didn't say that was one of my favorite parts other than the wrestling. Yeah, that's where you get to
Right?
talk with all the coaches, and officials get to talk with each other, or get to talk with the coaches too, and not be in that kind of competitive mode. You just everything comes down and it's just like, hey, let's eat Subway, or and
Yeah,
talk.
exactly. Have some pizza, or I don't know. I mean, we do barbecue and fried chicken in our area.
Well, all right, not everyone can be Kansas.
Right.
uh,
Uh,
I want to talk though. So you've been officiating 11 years, you said, and I think you said in your fourth year you got the state tournament, right? Your fourth year, was it?
my third year.
Third year, and that was with your
Yep.
mom with the finals and the heavyweight.
Uh-huh.
And then
Yep. Out at
now you're doing college, and you said you're the only female official in college, right?
As far as I know on
Okay.
our list. But if there are some other females registered with NCAA doing men's, by all means, give me a shout
Yeah, yeah, seriously.
for sure.
Let's talk about how you did that. I mean, that's because really what I heard, and you tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but it's like it was struggle to get kind of an opportunity. And then once you got one, people saw how good you were, and then you just kind of took off. I mean, that's what I.
And yeah, absolutely. I'm one of those people. I like a challenge. I want to keep improving, and I just think about what my mom went through and the barriers that she broke and the doors that she opened, for us females. Being one of the first. I mean, my mom's been officiating wrestling for 40 years. So yeah, I mean, that's a huge step for those of us now 30 years later I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for her. So it just kind of became like I've worked every class state for boys in Kansas a few times now. And I got to work the girls state last year, 5A, 6A, which was really awesome. I was kind of bummed I didn't get to work the very first girls state in Kansas.
So
My mom did.
they've done two?
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
sanctioned. You guys are sanctioned?
Yes. So this will be Kansas's third year being sanctioned.
Okay.
So yeah, my mom got to do the very first one, which they just did one big giant state. And then last year yeah, every division together. Yep.
Wow.
And then this year they broke it up into two different states, but they combined 3, 2, 1A and 4A together, and then 5A and 6A together at another site. So I'm assuming it'll probably stay the same this year, just number wise. But we might look at breaking it up even more, because boys is 3, 2, 1A together, 4A is a separate state, 5A is a separate state, 6A is a separate state.
Okay.
So yeah, so we got all the classes broken up basically for their own individual state. So girls number wise, obviously they've combined. So yeah, I got to work the girls, so that was fantastic. But I was, like I said, bummed I didn't get to work the very first one.
Yeah. Well, but it sounds like with, if you guys are growing, if girls wrestling is growing there as much as it is everywhere else, I mean, it sounds like you're on the path to having kind of a tournament that mimics the boys as well. It's just probably just you need numbers, right?
Yep, absolutely. And it is growing by far. I mean, I see teams from, last year that had 2 girls that have 9, 10 girls this year. That's a huge jump in 1 year, which is awesome. So yeah, it was just to circle back around. I just wanted a new challenge, and I kind of wanted to be that trailblazer as well, like my mom was, to break those. I mean, who doesn't want to be the first female official to referee a D1 national championship match? Me, I do. But that, for me, that's just a personal goal. I mean, that's the ultimate to me when it comes to wrestling, and not everybody's that way. Some people, they want to do freestyle and the Olympic trials and this and that. For me, that's the pinnacle. I want to work that D1 boys national match for sure. So we're getting there.
Yeah, sounds like, I mean, you're checking off the boxes as you go, and hopefully we've had some officials that have been able to do that on the show, and hopefully they watch this episode too, and maybe reach out to you. But let's talk about D1 college wrestling. I love it. So let's talk about some of that. So is that okay?
Oh yeah, I haven't got to work any D1.
D2. D2.
Yep,
and D3?
D2 is the highest that I have worked. Yep.
What have you done in D2 then? What's the highest you've done?
So I've been out to Ohio, out there to Ohio Northern. I did their tournament.
All right.
I went out to National Duels a couple years ago and worked out there on the open side. So got to see a lot of matches that day. Yeah. At one point, I was begging Fred, are we almost done? I got an 8-hour drive home, and I have to ref a tournament tomorrow. But it was good. It was a very good learning experience, for sure, because in our area, we have a lot of NAIA, JUCO, and there's D2, D3 as well. I mean, you got Central Missouri and, Drew, all of those, Lindenwood, Marysville, like, yeah, it was good to see different, because it is different from region to region wrestling style.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Of what you see. So it was just good the year before COVID, I spent a lot of time traveling the US. I lived in my car.
Well, I gotta ask this. Was your visit to Ada your only time visiting Ohio to Ohio Northern? Is that your only Ohio experience?
No, so a few years ago I went to their conference out there, their summit, their official summit.
Okay.
And that's where I met Fred Feeney.
Okay.
And so yeah, he kind of helped me along and yep, gave me a chance. I was like, yeah, come out this way if you're willing to travel. We'll use you.
Ohio Northern's, that's a great school. I think Coach Beechler's still there too. He does a lot behind the scenes for the rules committees and stuff like that. And yeah, that's cool. I was just curious because Ada's, it's a different town. It's not that big, right?
Well, let's put it this way. I don't get to spend much time in
Oh,
any
in
of
the
the
city.
places that I go. It's more so show up, check into your hotel, go to bed, get up, ref, drive to the next place.
Good, good for you, because if I'm traveling for coaching or running tournaments, I got to eat at like the place to eat in town. That's like I have to do that. That's my thing.
If I can manage to swing it, I am that way. A few years ago, I went up to is it Central in Iowa,
Okay.
and they have a little pub called the Peanut, and that
It
is the
already sounds like I needed to go. Like,
right. Yeah, absolutely. And so yeah. So if I do have the time and I'm not just traveling, an hours to drive, I am definitely a foodie, for sure. I more I'm not a huge sweets fan, but I did go to pastry school. So I kind
how's
of
that work
I,
out?
I kind of look out for those things when I travel places. It's like, all right, who's got like the best donut or stuff
Yeah,
along those. Or is there a gelato shop somewhere or a chocolate shop somewhere? Like,
we're on the same wavelength here. I like it.
right. Whereas most people are like, oh, what's the best burger joint? Or where do I get the best beer? Which that I'll go for a really good beer now. But for the most part, yeah, it's like, pastries, please.
Yeah. And the great thing is if you're around wrestlers and you ask them for like the best place to eat, you are getting the best place to eat because
Oh
they
yeah, absolutely.
know.
Oh yeah,
I got to get off food because one, I'm getting hungry, and two, I could do this all day, and that's not what this. That's what
right.
my other podcast is
What
about.
are you talking about?
Uh, so this season, what are you most excited for this season? Now that it's hopefully looking, knock on wood, looking like we're gonna have
Right.
a normal season. What are some of the big things you're excited about?
I am excited for all the girls events, honestly. Especially since we sanction girls, I don't get to work a lot of girls. I get assigned the boys. So I'm excited that there's more girls events so I can work the girls events. Because it's neat for them to see a female official out there. And I'm hoping that in doing that, we can recruit some of those ladies to come to the officiating side because some of them, at this point, they're trying it out because their friends are, or so they're new to the sport, and maybe after a couple of years, they're like, oh yeah, that was fun, but I don't want to do that after high school. So I'm hoping that maybe we can get some of those girls, or even after, college, if they do decide to wrestle in college, that, when it's all said and done, if you want to still be a part of the sport, hey, come talk to me. Let's move you along. I've got a couple kids here in town that, are interested, that are still in high school, that have started officiating, and stuff. So I don't work a whole lot of kids, so it's hard to mentor them. But also they know that, hey, you got a question, you got a problem, feel free to call me. I had a match last week that, eh, I was like, afterwards, I'm like, oh man, so I asked the coach to say, hey, will you send me the video on that? I want to see it. I want to be able to watch it again, and I asked my partner, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. I was on the backside. I couldn't quite tell. So yeah, it's just nice to be able to do that, like you said, with the video aspect and the live feed now, being able to go back, and stuff. So I'm looking forward to the girls. I like the more accountability of weigh-ins in our state for sure
Yeah, we're
than
working
has
on
been in
we're working
previous
on that
years.
out here. Yeah, we're working on reading the rule book.
Um,
We're still in the first week of the season, so we'll give a pass.
right. Well, just more so in Kansas, our kids used to weigh in before school.
Well, we did that in junior high, and that was the coolest thing ever.
Oh yeah, and I can understand in middle school for sure. It's a different dynamic.
Yeah,
You're still growing. You're still trying to figure out your body. I
yeah.
mean, seriously. I mean, you're doing that in high school, but mentally you're more prepared of the things you need to do and stuff.
It's a
So
huge
I'm
part of this.
happy to see that everybody's on a level playing field now. Everybody's in the same room, everybody's dressed the same, everybody's stepping on the scale at the same time. Nobody's running around. Nobody's getting extra sprints in over here while this person's weighing it. Or this person just ate, a buffet for lunch and then went and wrestled that afternoon.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that, and I've been doing it just long enough now that I'm getting to see kids later on that I had in middle school that are in high school. And now I've got some kids that I get to ref in college. I'm sure they don't appreciate it. I mean, I had a kid a few weekends ago. They said, "Man, I thought when I went to wrestle in college, I wouldn't get to see you anymore." And I'm like,
Oh,
okay. I mean, I know he meant it slightly as a joke, but also was half
yeah, but
serious,
was that after his match or before? Because that's
Oh,
some.
no, it's before.
All right,
I know,
I
right?
learned a little bit about picking his spots.
Yep. Like, maybe you should have told me that after I reffed your match. But no, I mean, so that's fun to see the kids progress like that. So yeah, I'm excited to see some of those kids how they're going to perform this year and get to basically be Matt's side of how much they've progressed. And we've already had our middle school season here in my area of the state. We just finished up right before Thanksgiving. And so that's been fun to see different kids that I saw last year, and they were brand new last year, and just a second year how much they've improved, that you're just like, oh my God, you're doing so great. And it's just fun to see other kids too, of like, I mean, I had one at Drury last weekend that a dad comes up to me and says, "Oh, hey, I do you remember me?" Of course not. No. I am the worst. All right. You can tell me your name 20 times. I'm not going to remember it for the most part. Like, so it was pretty cool. He goes, "Well, my son used to wrestle at DeSoto. He's wrestling at William Jewell now." And he goes, "You refed his very first high school win." I mean, that makes you feel good. Like, you're just like, "Oh yeah, really? Wow." And then also you're like, "Man, I feel old. I've been doing it this long." you know. But yeah, so little special moments like that come along each year that just you're like, "Yeah,. This is why I do this." So yeah, I'm looking forward to more moments like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts too, is being around wrestling and being involved in tournaments and stuff, is to see the kids when they make it to the next level. And it's not necessarily like, if you're an official, like you can take pride in stuff and officiating it, but it's just cool to see these kids like find themselves. And then like one of the coolest things like this year was to see David Taylor win a gold medal in the Olympics, because I watched him wrestle in the junior high grade school state championships in Ohio, when I don't know how he made 100 pounds unless he had like rolls of quarters in his socks. Like, he was a little guy.
Right.
He was a little guy, and now he's a man. Like, I mean, and just to see that, when you see these kids, and now that's a grand story. He doesn't know me from Adam, but it's just really cool when you.
But something you remember,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's what, as spectators, like when we're being good wrestling fans and we're not like losing our minds at officials, like that's maybe what we need to focus on, is like, okay, this is just a match now. Like, let's focus on what, how my behavior could impact this kid's future, right? Like, am I a
Right.
good example? as a coach and as a fan too, right? Because that would make it easier on officials, if we
Just
did,
a smidge.
yeah, yeah. Um,
But we don't do it because it's easy,
well,
I
I think
mean,
that's why you kind of touched on that earlier. Like most of your officials have some relation to wrestling, whether they were born around a mat or wrestled or whatever. And you wrestle and you officiate for the same reason. It's not easy. You like challenges and you just love it. There's something about walking into a gym with all these different wrestlers that I'm just like, I talk to my kids every time. I'm like, "Are you pumped?" And they're always like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I'm pumped." Like,
right? Like, how do you not feel the energy,
yeah.
Well, I have 3 older siblings, so I guess I'm prone to being verbally abused. So.
Okay. So there's anyone out there with older siblings, you would be a perfect official.
Right, you are perfect for the job. And your selective hearing gets really well. Like it does. I mean, there's people, it just cracks me up. And sometimes you find that zone that you literally can tune everything out and people can be screaming and it's just white noise. And man, those are the best days when you're hearing nothing. And you are in the zone. And I mean, not saying that you're not making mistakes or there's just things in your mind that you're like, oh, I wonder about that. But for the most part, yeah, you're in the zone. And then other days, I mean, you hear it all and you're just like, man, am I doing that bad today? And most of the time it's not, but it is a skill you have to learn when you officiate is to tune that out. Um, and thankfully it was acquired at a young age for me. So that helped tremendously when I first started. Because yeah, there's been, and maybe that is part of the difference with women too, is some of the comments that have been made to me officiating, I don't think would ever be made to a male. Like in that aspect
Yeah.
and stuff. So there is that little bit of nuance for sure of, or certain situations of I could have a fellow official make that same exact call and a coach wouldn't blink an eye, but because I made it, now he's calling me to the table. So there's those little nuances, I guess, with being a female. But other than that, I mean, everybody's been very welcoming in the years that I've officiated. I mean, it's funny when at some point the guys are like, "Oh, right, gals," and I'm like, "No, we don't have to differentiate. I've been one of the guys for a while now. Like, it's okay. Like, that makes me feel good. You don't have to differentiate in that aspect, So I do have an awesome group of officials that I work with that, yeah, we're a brotherhood, a sisterhood.
So, like you said, it's a everything hood, right? And we've been talking a lot about girls, women's wrestling. Today, it's funny because I'm trying to ignore all these text messages I'm getting because the Ohio Mat Media team is at Ironman covering that. But I know that you're doing a tournament themed like that as well. Want to tell us a little bit about that?
I am. I can't believe I forgot this earlier about what I'm looking forward to this year. Is the Wonder Woman tournament in Missouri. And oh my gosh, thank God I met Barb. Talk about a superstar, but that was, yeah, I'm looking forward to, I mean, they're talking 80, 90 girls teams. You're talking state placers from all over the US. I mean, yeah, I'm looking forward to some tough girls matches, plus meeting some other female officials like Kim Hernandez that you just had on. Yeah, so we've got to chat over text message and stuff, but yeah, I'm looking forward to putting a face with the name and just meeting them in person and just seeing everybody's different officiating styles, because I will say women officiate different than men. Like our movement on the mat, our mechanics are a little different. I mean, I definitely know I am a replica of Lisa Woody for sure of my mom. You can tell that I started officiating with her. I ref just like her. I award points like her. So yeah, it's just fun to see though the different ways other females officiate, and just how they maneuver about the mat. Like, I know I'm short. I have short little legs. So I can't stand clear on the edge of the circle because otherwise I got to sprint across the mat to get there with my short little leg, So there are some differences as a female, just physically, depending on your height and size and all of that. But just also demeanor, women are a little bit different than men. So I'm looking forward to seeing just how other females officiate, because other than my mom and then Barb this year with the rogue duel that we did with girls Missouri versus Kansas, that's about all I've officiated with. Besides some kids way back years and years ago, we had a couple young females close to my age, and then they got real careers, so and got out of officiating. So yeah, and just creating a bigger network with us female officials for sure. Just to grow, like you said, we're hurting. We are hurting for officials. I mean, I think there's been an email sent out every day this week for our area for needing officials for today, tomorrow. They're still needing an official for a tournament tomorrow. Like,
been there, done that, and thank the good Lord someone answered. Else, I think we'd still be wrestling that tournament a week later.
Right. On your 2 mats, 2 officials.
Yeah. And they might, I don't know if that would have happened. I don't know if they would have made it half a day, because it was the first week of the season too. You talk about having some rust too, like officials have it too their first time on the mat. It's not just the competitors that are getting out there for the first time, wrestling in front of people. These officials probably haven't blown a whistle in 3/4 of a year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's why I get to start my season with middle school. We start at the end of October here in my area. So yeah, I get to kind of brush the dust off for a week or two before I start college.
Wait a minute though. So in Kansas, you said middle school starts like end of October and it's done by Thanksgiving?
Uh-huh. It's like a 6 to 8 week. That's it. The reason the reason they do it, which I really like, because in Western Kansas, where I'm from, there is a league that does do it that way. But the way I grew up, they started in January. So you had to pick or choose in middle school whether you wanted to play basketball or you wanted to wrestle. So with them splitting it and doing wrestling early, it gives middle school kids a chance to play both sports, which I like.
Yeah,
I like that, just because some kid, you really don't know at that point in middle school for the most part whether maybe if you've grown up wrestling or playing basketball early. But for some of these kids, they're trying the sport for the first time, both of them, wrestling and basketball. So it gives them a couple years to figure out which avenue they want to take, or it may just be, sports aren't for me, and that's okay too. But it does suck that the season is so short. But I do like that the kids get the opportunity to try out both in those developmental years.
Yeah. Well, you're speaking to the choir. I'm our junior high team, and again, 6 kids. But 4 of them are doing some other activity where they're missing some of practice, either on the front end or the back end. They're either going to band or academic challenge and missing in the first 40 minutes, or they're leaving to go to their basketball practice.
Yep.
So they're practicing 90 minutes as opposed to 2 hours. And then, luckily so it can be done, but you're right. Like the kids should be able to do both of them. And I'm one of the people that believe wrestling is an extremely long season, especially when you're talking about college wrestling. Now it's tough on your body,
Very much so.
So I can see, the goodness of that too. But I also, one of the only ways to get better is to be on the mat, so that's the wrestler in me. Come on, dude.
But I feel bad for that kid that maybe went out for basketball in middle school because it seemed easier. And then now all of a sudden in high school, all his buddies are wrestling. So his freshman year, they finally convince him to come out. And then it's
not even a level playing field, really.
Yeah, no, huh? And then he ends up getting hammered. And then he's like, I hate this stupid sport, and then ends up hating it. And, so it's just, it's one of those, I like the fact that kids decide, yes, even though it's a short season, they get to try both, but there's so many other opportunities. I mean, we have so many kids clubs and outside clubs for those kids to continue wrestling in the off season and on the weekends when they aren't playing a different sport. I'm a firm believer that you should be multi-sport.
Yeah.
This day and age of trying to get kids to only play one sport, I feel is detrimental to them.
Well, misplaced too. I think sometimes it's not that you're a kid and you don't have complete autonomy, but a lot of times it's the parents kind of vicariously making decisions for these children. And
back in my day, I was gonna be that superstar.
yeah, and then you wonder why that parent gets so mad, because one, that they're not happy their kids maybe not performing the way they want, but ultimately they're not achieving the goal that person has in their head.
Wanted, yep.
Yeah, and that's not fair to anyone. And that's where you get, I think that's where you get the angry fans, right? I mean, it's just not logical, that whole process that we talked about. So just think about that.
Right.
But you talked about and I usually get to this point in every show, talked about some things that maybe we could do to get more officials. So let's talk about that a little bit. I actually had one of those aha moments last night. So another coach that I get to coach with, Jared Upper, he does the Wrestling Philosophy podcast. So if you're listening to this episode, check it out. He talks with coaches, athletes, just personalities, wrestling personalities. But it's about Christmas break. So what happens at our schools? We were a wrestling school for a long time. We're down a little bit recently, but usually the past kids come and they come in the room, and then they'll come and coach, help the younger kids. And it's the coolest thing, because you never know who's going to come in what day. But anyhow, so we had an official come in yesterday because we're preparing for this statewide meeting on Monday for all Ohio officials. And he just looked at him, this kid, he's a freshman, and it's first year out of high school. He goes, "You should be an official. You're a great wrestler. You should be an official." And he just looked, he goes, "Never even thought of it. Never even thought of it." Like, you know what I mean? Like, so we're missing a big opportunity, because now this, 19-year-old is now thinking, "Hey, I might do this." I don't know if they will, but I mean, sometimes it's just as easy as going up to someone and being like, "You should be an official." Like they said to you, "I want you at my tournament next year." Like someone
Right.
shows a little bit of faith in you, you want to prove them right.
I just had that happen Tuesday night. I had a kid that I refed in high school, and he was there at the duel, had finished college, came back to the area, and is just working. And I just said, "Hey, you're a great wrestler. Like, why don't you think about officiating? Here, I'm going to give you some numbers. Here's some places to start out. I'll help you as much as I can." But yeah, he was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I do baseball and, and stuff," but I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, why not try wrestling?" And, I guess in a way with younger kids, I always try to pitch it money wise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is how much money you can make doing this. Because, it kind of drowns out the, "Oh, you're going to be yelled at for quite a bit," but here's some compensation for it. So, and then that same night, I decided to stop in at Walmart on my way home, and this guy comes up to me and you couldn't even see my stripes on. I had my jacket on and stuff, and he goes, "Hey, aren't you a wrestling referee?" And he had his son with him. I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, this is my son. He wrestled, he just graduated a couple years ago, but he wrestled and you refed his matches and stuff." And I said, "Well, hey, are you in the area? We're short officials. We could really use some younger guys. Here's my information, contact me. I'll help you out and stuff." But I will say, I definitely was not the best at doing that in previous years, of trying to bring younger officials on, just because it is hard for young officials, and we have to get a different mindset as spectators, as coaches, as fellow officials, of It's this kid's first year. Give him a break. Yeah, he's going to make mistakes. Guess what? Those of us that have been doing it 10, 20, 30, even 40 years, we all make mistakes. We're human, we're going to screw up at some point in time, but you got to give that kid a chance, because on the flip side, you're sitting there and complaining about, oh, well, I have this old official here, that's ref me 20 years ago. He has no, he or she has no business being out there. But then you harass that young kid that's trying so hard to break into the sport. And then you wonder why we can't get young officials, and I think that's the biggest obstacle we have right now, is just trying to get younger guys in and approaching them, because it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to recruit people of like, yes, here, you're getting paid, but come get verbally abused for a while, for hours on end. I mean, how do you put some stars and glitter on that?
You don't. There's no marketing. There's no amount of marketing spin you can put on that. And you know what?
No.
I think one of the easiest ways to combat that is, and this is something I did last week, because now I think about this now, like, all right, we got a podcast, not a ton of people watch, right, or whatever, but doesn't matter. I'm out here saying we need more officials, and I'm, trying to be an advocate of the sport. So I can't lose my mind at the table. You know what I mean? Like, that's bad. That's bad.
That's bad PR.
Yeah, it's bad for the brand. So, and not that I do, but if I got to challenge something, I want to know, why that call was made, so we can coach appropriately. But one of the things, I think one of these things I did, and the other thing is something I think we can do is, so when I saw the 4 officials, because remember the night before I thought we were only going to have 2 with 25. I went up and introduced myself to them and just said, hey, thank you guys for being here. You're from the area. I hadn't seen any of them before, and I think if coaches go up and just have a short conversation with an official and kind of get to know them, maybe thank them for being there, then later it's a lot harder to lose your mind on a person that right?
Right.
So like,
or that you have tried to endear yourself to as well, exactly. It's kind of a two-way street as well, because as an official too, you've got, and you try not to be that way, but I know every official out there has gotten to that point where you've got that coach in the corner and he is just chirping nonstop the entire match. And guess what? Yeah, when you call me to the table to question something, I'm probably not going to be as nice and understanding about it that you've been chirping this entire time, whereas compared to before, yeah, you come up, hey, thanks for being here. I might get out of hand in the corner. Just know I'm fighting for my kid, type kind of thing and stuff. So, you chirp a couple times in the corner. Okay. And then you call me. Most of the time we know you're calling because you're fighting for your kid. Absolutely. I understand that. But yeah, it just a little different attitude when, when you're constantly berating me for a 6-minute match and you call me at the 5-minute mark, my sunny disposition might not be so sunny.
And I think another thing, and maybe people do this, I haven't seen it too often, but like another thing, tournament directors or the head official, there's always like a coaches meeting, at least in junior high. I think this problem isn't as bad. Like once you get to high school, yes, coaches lose their minds, right? But you don't have your newer officials officiate right. High school. So they've kind of...
Oh, but we do now.
Well, I know because it's
so short. Yeah.
But in a typical time, yeah. You have a little time to build calluses, right? And build up your thicker skin. But I think if you could just say, hey, these are your officials today. By the way, Joe over here, this is his first, he just got his license in the fall. This is his first tournament. Just be patient with him, and like point out, just tell the coaches, and again, you have to be logical, right? Like, cause if I hear that, I'm going to be like, all right, kid gloves with that person.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean I can go berserk on the other ones, but I mean, just letting them know, even saying like, guys, we couldn't do this tournament yesterday. We're going to cancel it because we had 2 officials because you guys are abusing these people. So
right. Yeah.
I don't want to be here for 14 hours next year. Don't be a jerk, Yeah.
Which I will say, I think getting back to that, we are getting better with educating parents and newer coaches, and also just the penalty. I know in Kansas here, say you get kicked out of a tournament, you are now out for the next competition.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to take a sportsmanship class. Now, for coaches and parents, that's out of their own pocket. I wish they would up the amount of that because
Amazing what that does, that dollar deterrent.
yeah, well, I know, but yes, but $20.
No, I'm saying it should be higher.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like make it 50, make it 100.
Here's this is something.
Or
Go ahead.
in kids with USA wrestling, if you are kicked out, you're out for 8 days. So you automatically miss basically an entire week plus a day. So like in a qualifying series, you decide to lose your head and you get kicked out of sub-state, guess what? You're out for state and for the rest of the year, and so you just ended your season. Now you don't get to watch your kid or this, that, or the other. So I do like that we've put those things in play with that of we're penalizing a bit more than, okay, just go sit in the parking lot. Well, guess what? Hey, your son wrestles or your daughter wrestles tomorrow or the next day. You don't get to go watch that anymore. Or same with a coach. You don't get to coach your kids, because it's one of those of not saying that there aren't officials that don't lose their mind, but for the most part, we don't ever get to be that person. I don't ever get to lose my shit.
You lose your license then.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas it's like for on the flip side, oh well, okay, you got kicked out for the day, go sit in the parking lot. So I'm glad to see that we're starting to hold people accountable for their actions. And as an official, with that being said, say you mess up a call, I had one a few weeks ago at Lindenwood. Oh my God, I botched this match so hard, like so bad. And afterwards, I'm just like, oh my God, Rachel, what? I saw the coach later and I said, I'm sorry. I effed that match up big time. I know I did. So it's like you still have to be accountable. I'm just glad to see that it's not just more so one-sided now. Now it's kind of more even across the playing field.
Well, I mean, I'll take it a step further. So here's where this idea comes from. The Ohio Athletic Committee, they run youth sporting events, so junior high and down. Okay.
Okay.
So cheerleading, football, and then wrestling. It's 27 years they've been doing this junior high state tournament. About 20 for the grade school. One division. It is I'm biased, but it's the best junior high tournament in the United States. You got to see it. I mean, they go all out, lights, smoke, parade of champions, like a cool video before the finals.
Oh yeah.
It mimics the Ohio State tournament. The whole idea was to get these young kids prepared. So then when they get to the Schottenstein Center at Ohio State, this 26,000 seat arena.
Right. That they're not shell shocked.
Yeah. But here's what they do. So if you're a coach and you want to challenge something, not like in the match with an official, but if you want to stop the match and you're like, I want to talk to the head table about this official or whatever, it's okay. It's $75. If you win, here's your money back. If not, that money goes into the scholarship fund. Do you still want to change?
There's some national tournaments that I work that way. You put $100 on the table, you challenge it. Okay, great. Yeah, put your money where your mouth is.
I mean, but you could do that for any association, really. Like the OHSA could do that. You could do that for parents. Like if a parent gets kicked out of a tournament, why should they get to go to the next tournament?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how you enforce that, but what I'm saying, in a perfect world,
quick, get that person's name, write it down.
We're being all punitive here.
I mean, I think we could do better in the state of Kansas of retaining and getting new officials, but I think everybody is hurting across the board I
Texas,
mean,
apparently.
yeah, I know, right? I saw Kim's video. I was like, oh yeah, look at you getting your numbers
Kim
up,
and
adding
Rex, yep.
people,
Kim and Rex are killing it in Texas.
right? But yeah, so I just last year was hard, and that put a whole different dynamic on everything. I mean, just life is the way we know it. I feel like we're getting closer to where we were before all of that. Um, so we lost some officials, some really good officials with that. And I understand personal reasons, family reasons, whatever it may be. And maybe some people took that year off and was like, why am I going back to that
Yeah.
nonsense? you know. So we lost some really good officials, but I think we're almost having to kind of start over again with the recruiting process, and we're retaining what we have for the most part, but we're not getting any new in. But we've got some great guys in our area that are doing a really good job of getting some younger officials. And like I said, I mean, I know I'm guilty. The last few years, I have not done a good job of trying to recruit officials because I've been kind of one track of this is where I want to get on the college level. And, I mean, yeah, I was selfish and I had a personal goal and that's what I'm going for. But, you got to kind of widen the view and realize that you can't just tunnel vision here. Somebody's going to have to take your place at some point. So I've been working and trying to be that person as well. And I think the more, and now that we've got some younger guys that are moving up the ladder, I think that helps as well of seeing those kids out there and giving those kids a shot. And like you mentioned before, just interacting with the coaches, or like you said, in that pre-meet with the coaches and the head official. Hey, I got some young guys here today, and everybody has to start somewhere. I mean, you do. And whether you've been doing a bunch of JV tournaments and middle school and stuff, nothing is ever going to prepare you for your first ever varsity tournament. It's it's not. There's nothing like it. I mean, you can sit and watch video all you want. I mean, same like with my first college tournament. Oh my gosh. I don't even know how much video I watch. It still doesn't prepare you for when you step on the mat and blow that first whistle. It doesn't. I mean, you got butterflies. I mean, I don't know how many times that I called my mom on the way home in tears, of like, this is what happened. This is, a hot mess. So it is hard. So I think definitely the pre-meet for sure of like, hey, give these guys a chance. And you've got some, veteran officials there to say, hey, I got your back, and I always tell kind of like what I tell my table workers or younger kids, it's just a match. It's it's not life and death. All right. And this isn't the Olympics. It's not. you know. So it's not the end all be all. And we're human. We make mistakes. So if we gotta stop, we gotta go back, we gotta talk it through, figure it out. That's what we'll do. And then we'll move on. And if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. But so be it. We're still gonna move forward, is the whole point. But you can't dwell on that. And that is probably the hardest part as a younger official. I know for me, because even after 11 years, I still have those matches in the back of my head. Even though I watch a video, I'm still like, oh, man, if I could go back, would I change that, and stuff. So you just have to remind your younger guys, and just encourage. And so I think we as a group, not only Kansas, but across the nation, can do a better job of encouraging young officials, and rather than the mindset of, oh, they're going to take my spot.
Yeah.
Well, they should.
Yeah, that's how things happen.
Eventually they should, like some of us, I say these guys, because it is the majority of guys that have been doing this for 30, 40 years. At some point, you're going to have to hang up the hat, and we need somebody to take that spot. So bring that person along.
Honestly, I'm sure there are people out there that wish and had plans on retiring last year or this year that are actually not doing that. Like they've been planning their life with their significant other, their kid.
Oh, yeah.
and they're still doing it because they know, and I've heard this, like they know if they don't, it's going to negatively impact the kids and the sport. And
Oh
so
yeah,
they're saying, I'll give 4 months of my life again. You know what I mean?
right.
That says a lot. And so I think this last section here, if officials and wrestling people would just listen to this, because I think there's some good nuggets in here on things that you could do that are really easy to set these newer officials up for success, or at least knock down some of the hurdles that they might have to jump over. And that's just communication, right? Like talking to the coaches and saying, just, hey, this is a situation. This is what we got. We're gonna make the best of it. It's not the Olympics,
Right.
right? Like you said.
I mean, I think it comes down to really the golden rule of, treat others how you want to be treated, So whether you're a coach, you're an official, you're a table worker, I mean, that's a pet peeve of mine. You scream and yell at my table workers. Oh, it's not going to be a good day for you, because those people volunteer for the
Yeah,
most part. They're
they're
not
not
getting
getting paid.
paid.
No.
No, or they got dragged out of the stands, or because somebody didn't show up. Heck, they might not even know the sport at all, but at least they're willing to help run a table so that this can happen.
Yeah.
So I just think, and I have to remind myself that sometimes too. I'm like, oh, don't go in with this just because you don't really like this person. Don't go into this event with that mindset of, once you step in, everything else goes out the door, and it's a new day. It's a brand new setting. It's the first match out every single time. I mean, you still get butterflies like with the big events, but like that's kind of how I keep it in perspective of, it's just another Saturday. It's just another event. Because if you get caught up in it, then you start to spiral. And so I think people kind of need to remind themselves too of like, yeah, you may have been pissed off at me last week over that one call, but guess what? Today's new.
Yeah.
The slate is clean. We're 0-0 again. Okay. So let's give it another shot. So yeah, I just think, man, treat people with kindness. Be nice. Stop being a jerk.
Yep, stop being a jerk. We got to end on that. Stop being a jerk. Rachel, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, absolutely.
I love this. Your energy is fantastic. Hopefully you have that throughout this long weekend of tournaments and events you have.
Like I said, I'm already pumped for girls today, so this will just, even make it even better.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. I know that we're working on some things. So thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, stick on. All right.
All right, will do.